Alan Schimmel, and you're watching TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network for Tuesday, March 31st, and welcome. For those of you who didn't catch our initial broadcast yesterday, TechStrong TV is something we're going to be doing here at Media Ops every day. We're going to start with a 2-hour lineup of scheduling, and we're going to expand that to 4 hours, probably within the next week to two. And really, what is TechStrong TV? If you didn't watch yesterday, it's our response to what's going on in the world. Hey, many of you watching this are watching it from home. Rather than watching it on your computer screen, maybe you're watching it on Roku TV or Apple TV or Amazon Fire, or perhaps on a mobile app on your tablet. We're working from home. It's a strange time, or at least an unusual time for many of us. Surreal in some ways. And if you're like me, you're probably tired of listening to the news. It's kind of a bad news generator, and we want to know what's going on. It's important, but we don't need it 24/7. If you're also like me, you're probably spending a lot of nights binging on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Disney and Apple and what have you. But we're thinking that, again, if you're like me, you're out there and you want to hear what's going on in tech news. You want to find out, keep learning, keep expanding your expertise in what's happening in tech and software development, DevOps, digital transformation, cloud native, and cybersecurity. Well, those are the areas we're going to cover every day here. And we're really happy for you to join us, whether you're watching us live or perhaps on a tape delay. Do try to make time to check us out every day. And you'll see over the next week as we expand, we're going to start making this a little bit more interactive. I'd like to open a Slack channel and get some audience feedback. We're working on that. We'd like to open a Zoom room and allow some folks to come on here. We will be scheduling more live interviews as well. So, this is our second day, day 2, as we roll this out. Give us a chance and we'll get this going. The other thing I wanted to mention, that along with, why the name TechStrong, is that in spite of everything that we're all dealing with, tech will go on. We will continue to develop. We will continue to deploy. We will continue to monitor, and we'll continue to protect our IT assets. And because that's what the tech community does. We may not be able to meet in person. We may be doing virtual and on-air stuff like this, but we will move that. We will continue to do so. As part of that, I also want to mention that we are holding TechStrong Conference, a virtual conference, on June 4th. And would love to have you guys check it out. The website will be up shortly, announcing our first set of speakers, and it's techstrongcon.com. And of course, you can follow along on the web here at techstrong.tv or digitalanarchist.live and digitalanarchist.com. Anyway, with that being said, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let's jump into our programming for today. We do, as I mentioned, have about 2 hours worth of programming lined up for you. And some of it is coming out of our video archives. We have, between our YouTube channel of DevOps TV on YouTube and our Digital Anarchist archives, we literally have thousands of great interviews that we'll be pulling from selectively, only the best, over these next few weeks to supplement our live programming. So we'll be right back with some stuff, but before we do, a quick word from our sponsors.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and we're back here on TechStrong TV over the Digital Anarchist Network. Thanks for staying with us. Next, I want to bring to you a video. Our next segment's going to be a video, and it's actually one of the my most favorite interviews that I've conducted in 5-6 years of doing interviews as part of DevOps.com and Digital Anarchist. This is an interview I did. I believe it was at DevOps Enterprise Summit in London in 2019, and I call it my PhD panel because all three members were PhDs. It features Dr. Steven Spears, comes out of MIT, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, of course, from Dora. She's now with GitHub at Microsoft, and before that, Google Cloud. And really the star of the panel is Dr. Christina Maslak, probably the foremost authority in the world on worker burnout. And you know what? I picked this to show today for a couple of reasons. Number one, as I said, it is one of my favorites. But secondly, even though you're working from home, many and most of you probably are watching this, don't think that working from home doesn't subject you to burnout. For many of us, we are now juggling being a homeschool teacher, taking care of the house, working in a very different environment than we're used to, trying to maintain keep our communication channels open with our coworkers, cohabiting with our family that we usually don't do during the day, and getting our work done. And burnout is real, and that's one of the main points of this interview. You're going to see that burnout is a real thing, so real, in fact, that it's been recognized by the medical authorities as a real condition. So this is a great interview with three really smart PhD folks, doctors, discussing it, including, as I said, Dr. Maslak, who's one of the leaders in the world on this. And so have a listen to it. It's rather long. It's about a half hour. We'll probably break it into two here, and you'll be able to come back. So here we are, Dr. Christina Maslak, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, and Dr. Steven Spear on worker burnout. Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com on the Digital Anarchist video platform. And we're in London at the DevOps Enterprise Summit 2019. And really one of the highlights of the 3 days here for me is this panel. We are surrounded by PhD doctors here, and I'm really happy to have them. Let me introduce them and we'll get started. I'm going to start with my extreme right hand, where we have Dr. Christine Maslak. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to read your whole title, but if you would like to give them a little of your background, Dr. Maslak, I'd be honored.
Okay. I'm a professor of psychology and have been at the University of California, Berkeley for my whole career. And a good chunk of that has been doing research on burnout.
Some of groundbreaking research as well. Not to embarrass you, but don't be too modest. To my, I guess, the man in the middle is Dr. Steven Spear, who has also appeared at DevOps Enterprise Summit before. But Dr. Spear, why don't you give them a little of your background?
Yeah, thanks. So currently I'm on the faculty at MIT in the Sloan School of Management. My work focuses very much on trying to understand and then replicate the ability of some organizations to deliver wicked more value into the marketplace than their counterparts. And a lot of my work is with companies and organizations of different types.
And also, not to embarrass you, but you've also done some groundbreaking
thank you.
research and work as well. And those of us, I think, who've been lucky enough to attend some of your sessions here at DevOps Enterprise Summit, and others have, and other places where you've presented and been published, have been lucky to see it. And then to my immediate right, really, this woman needs no introduction to our DevOps.com audience. She's a frequent guest and one of our rock stars, Dr. Nicole Forsgren. Dr. Nicole, welcome.
Thanks so much.
Just in case no one knows who you are, why don't you give them your background? Just
Sure.
to be consistent.
Sure. I do research and strategy at Google. I lead the Dora team, and prior to being at Google, I was CEO and co-founder of Dora. And I lead all of the state of DevOps research.
And DORA stands for DevOps Research and Assessment.
Yep.
And underneath that title is 6 years and 27,000 some responses to surveys.
Yeah, I think we're over 30-ish now.
30, yeah.
Yeah.
But this isn't a DORA research panel. Today, we're going to talk about what you guys are speaking about at DevOps Enterprise Summit. And Dr. Maslak, it's kind of right in your wheelhouse. So why don't we let you kick it off and
Right.
give us the high level about what we're talking about.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, my work has been on burnout, which I ran across serendipitously when I was interviewing people about something else, and what they really wanted to talk about was this unnamed thing, and eventually, began to focus on that, and people started calling it burnout, and, been working on that for many years. Many people have been doing research on burnout, so one of the exciting things is just a few weeks ago, the World Health Organization officially added burnout to its next publication of ICD, which is essentially international classification of, health issues. And so it was unanticipated. I was not near the internet at the time that came in, so it was kind of exciting. But they basically sort of validated a lot of the research and said it is an occupational phenomenon, an experience. They made it very clear it's not a disease, but it can have health implications, and people can be seeking out health professionals for help with this. And they defined it as a response to chronic stressors at work that have not been successfully managed. They listed the 3 elements of exhaustion, cynicism, and professional inefficacy. And so it was like, wow, this is really,
It's real.
really something. Some big sort of thing. So this was exciting news just recently. With respect to work engagement, back in the 90s, my colleague Michael Leiter and I were really kind of trying to focus on, so what is the positive opposite? What are we trying to move towards if we're trying to prevent or, reduce the risk of burnout? And this was a time of positive psychology, looking at positive things rather than negative. It was also that we found that people were reluctant to participate in research on burnout in the United States because if it got known that there were problems, they could be sued. We are a very litigious, society. And so it was like, just tell me what to do. And I said, can you participate in some of our evaluative research on what might work? No, just tell me what to do. So we thought, well, maybe we can reframe some of this work in terms of moving in that positive direction, because people who did not score highly on burnout actually looked really pretty good in terms of what they were doing and how they were working. And we decided to call that engagement. Now, the problem with that is that engagement has been used as the same word for many related. They're all positive, but they all have different kind of definitions and different ways of getting at it. So in Europe, one of my colleagues that I had worked with before decided to make a separate engagement measure, the Utrecht scale, and that talks about vigor and dedication and absorption, getting into a flow. Gallup, which has surveys that a lot of companies use, has a very different definition, and so on the one hand, the positive thing is that we're all sort of saying we can get to a place where people really thrive and grow and do good things, with the work and take pride in, what they're accomplishing. How do we get there? The not so good news is that it's really not clear how you get there. And I think that's really the challenge. There's a lot of words, there's a lot of things about it, but it's not a simple thing saying, so go out.
Go be engaged.
Thrive, prosper, and
Go get engaged.
Yeah. So
Something like Jewish mothers and fathers say to their children.
do it.
Dr. Spear, what about you? Give us your take on this topic of engagement.
Yeah, so yesterday the doctor was giving a talk talking about the sort of the technical etymology of the term.
Yeah.
And I think the references you made were launching a rocket
Good.
and burning out the fuel before you hit your destination, or a ball bearing and a mechanical device which burns out from wear and tear. I think the commonality for both those is the inefficient use of a resource and the ineffective use of it, so that it breaks, so that you're using it improperly, so it breaks down before you get the full value out of it. And I think that's probably true of people too, right? Which is we put people in organizations which are these wildly complex, interactive organisms, and then we don't properly support and engage them, so they have a sense of purposelessness, ineffectiveness, isolation, et cetera, et cetera. And so all the potential they bring and all the aspirations they bring get burnt out because of this ineffective, inefficient use of people's time and energy.
Yeah, no, that's a nice way of putting it. Thank you. I'll remember that.
Dr. Nicole, let's bring this into IT and DevOps maybe down the road, but you've done so much research specifically with the IT teams. Some would say, oh yeah, this is a real big problem, but not for IT people. We're masters of the universe, right? We're developing all these applications that people use, and we're in such high demand, and we hop jobs every 6 months instead of asking for a raise. And why would we be the last people who you have to worry about for engagement or suffering burnout? Not true. I've been there. I've been in this industry almost 30 years. Talk to us. What have kind of things that you found and some of the data?
So it's interesting because I hear both sides, right? So sometimes I hear tech is the worst for burnout because we just push and push and push and push until we go. And I've heard burnout doesn't apply at all because all we have to do is maximize our output for a couple of years and then switch jobs, because particularly in Silicon Valley, we don't have the right incentives to make the workplace better, because all you have to do is switch jobs in 18 months to 3 years, and that's how you optimize your income. And so all you have to do is swap companies and find a better culture fit, and then you're good. And so organizations don't even have the right incentives to make the workplace better, to make engagement better, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I think starting in 2014 or 2015, we added a measure of burnout to the research to see if this was a phenomenon that was showing up in the data. Because again, at least as researchers, we appreciate that intuition and data is important and is nice, but unless we can measure it, then it's not real. And we absolutely find that mismatches in values and mismatches in expectations really do lead to burnout. And it's not just overwork, right? I love that you talked about that in your presentation yesterday. It's not just pushing too much. It really is that combination of those three things, right? It's cynicism, it's exhaustion, it's workplace, inefficacy. It really is the three of those things, and it's showing up several places. And it's not just limited to, some people say, oh, it's just a tiny startup where you don't have the resources that you need, or oh no, it's just large organizations that don't care about how you're feeling. We're seeing it throughout the industry. And so it really is a problem.
I'd just like to kind of put a little cherry on this. Not a cherry, actually, it's the opposite. Little bad stuff. We talk about engagement and hopping. Oh, I'm not happy in this job, I'll jump to the next job. And I had burnout here, I'm going to go somewhere else. I mean, there is a dark, sinister, lethal side of burnout. Right? And I've seen it, unfortunately, firsthand in our industry, where burnout leads to depression and I mean, just to life and death situations, right? I mean, that's the truth of it. And so not to trivial, it's great to speak about it from an academic level, but I want our people at home to understand when we talk about burnout, this is something that it's life and death for some people, right? And I'll never forget the first time one of a friend of mine took his own life. seemed like a happy person. It sounds so stupid, right?
Yeah.
Seemed like a happy person. Had a good job.
Yeah.
But
But
you don't know what
Not
lurks
then.
in the heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, beyond unfortunate. What can we do? How do we identify before it gets to that level?
Yeah.
What can we do as an industry?
Yeah.
What does our research tell us? I mean, just hopping jobs, and saying, it doesn't make a difference. They're going to
That's
leave.
not just the solution. And I think some of the most important things to do, and I love that, you touched on this, is understanding what leads to it and identifying it first is most important, because then you can identify, the interventions necessary to fix it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're definitely the expert
Yeah.
here, so I'll let you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to say there is that I think, we talk about it like you just did with your friend as sort of what's happening to the individual. There's a lot of collateral damage that goes on, which is a part of that, which is that we don't do enough to seek each other out, help each other, mentor each other when we see signs of problems, rather than putting that person down as, not going to get a promotion, not going to be on my team, as opposed to this is somebody who, for whatever, is struggling. We're getting more of this culture of fear where you don't want to speak up about, I can't really quite figure out the solution. I wish I had some good advice. I'm not feeling so well. I've got an emergency in my family, but I can't leave. All of these kinds of things is you can't turn to somebody. With suicide is often this thing of you feel alone, even though you're in the midst of a lot of people, because you feel you can't. And when you say your friend was looking happy, what we often find is what I would call pluralistic ignorance, which is that we're so afraid of letting other people think we're not so good, or we've got a problem, or, not coping well today, that we put on this happy face. I'm fine, I can do it, and you look around, everybody's, I'm fine, I'm whatever. Nobody knows. And so sometimes some of the data that you can share with people, anonymously is like, 42.5% of you said the following. It's kind of like everybody's looking at each other saying, wait a minute,
The reassurance, like, you're not crazy. This isn't in your head.
Yeah, it's actually,
it's real.
Yeah.
There's something, but it gives these things, it's not that it's blaming the person. There's something, whatever, that didn't work, but that actually there's more of us who kind of go in and out of those kind of bad days, good days, all that kind of thing. And trying to realize that other people, and that includes your colleagues at work, particularly because they understand what you do better than anybody else on the planet and could be your best resource. And rather than being your worst enemy and, whatever, how do we build more of that kind of real partnership, mentorship? Are we looking at the people who are coming up? The newbies, the ones who are going to be in our footsteps, are we helping them? Are we working with people? Do we see signs and say, wow, what's happening with you? I've got this sick child, my parent, da-da-da-da. Why don't you take off early? I'll cover, something that really provides that kind of social support and network, which is one of the best things for well-being, psychologically, of any individual.
Now, I would say quickly, reach out to your peers, reach out to your colleagues. Also understand, if you're in that situation, get help, right? Friends are there, colleagues are there, help someone if you can, but also,
But there are places for help,
therapists
too.
are wonderful.
Yeah.
Therapists are lovely.
Yeah.
Right?
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Yeah, and I think that
And without
yeah.
blame. I mean, there's
Oh,
no...
no.
But that's the key thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
have talked to people who say, yeah, we have a wellness committee now. And it says, if you're having a bad problem, come see us. And then you get targeted as the person who went in the
Went to the
door
WellNet.
because,
Yep.
so what does that say about you? So there's still, I talked recently at a conference, RSA conference, with people who are in cybersecurity work. Huge, difficult kind of work.
No, that's my background. I
That's
know.
your background, so I don't have
Yeah.
to say why. But one of the interesting things that was sort of coming out, and I was learning a lot from this, was they were talking about how hard they have to work, how, they love the 80-hour work week so much, we do 2 of them. Cynicism is our core competency, all of this kind of thing. And they were talking about that globally, I think it was on the order of, we have 4 million jobs unfilled, which is why we have to work 2 80-hour weeks, because we don't have these other people. But in talking to a lot of people, it became clear that part of what's happening is not that they're not hiring, they're hiring all the time. And people are coming in, starting to work and saying,
churn.
are you kidding me?
Yeah, no,
Am
you
I
churn
going to
right
work
out.
in this environment? No, thank you, I'm out of here.
The burnout is incredibly difficult. I mean, the
Yeah.
joke sometimes is it's much more pronounced, but my background was I was an engineer, but I was ops for a long time. The joke is that your job is to say no all the time. That job is exhausting.
I mean,
when all
security,
you
that
ever
is
do
the
is
job. We're the people who
when
say
all you
no.
ever do is say no,
Yeah.
you are the bad guy.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, it's not only
Always,
that. We
yeah.
say no all the time, and bad stuff happens anyway. because-
Exactly.
I mean, when you
yeah.
said I was like tweeting your talk yesterday.
yeah, oh, yeah.
And when you said the best day you ever have is when nothing goes wrong.
Yeah. And you're saying,
No
okay,
one
got there.
notices
You say no, no one notices you.
Yeah.
There is no thanks for that.
There's no positive, like, wow, that was pretty good because we didn't have
I mean, I
any
used to
complaints.
joke, there's no joy and I told you so. That's
Yeah.
all you can ever do is say no and I told you so.
Yeah.
No one loves you.
It's going to be,
No, I founded a company that made security products, and we used to call them the bad news generators because that's what they are. They're the bad news generators. But Dr. Spear, I'd like to get you more involved here.
Yeah.
Can't let you off the hook.
No, so I had some thoughts on the
Go ahead.
cause of this and perhaps the corrective actions. So one is a management metaphor that might not be right, and it misses sort of basic human need. So the management metaphor you're sort of alluding to is this idea that there's almost like a Moneyball approach to assessing people, that people have roles and you can assess how well people can play that role, and as a result you can insert them into a system, and when they burn out you can pull them out, and then there's a clean replacement for that. So your whole notion of 36 months of people sort of being ejected from the system and a new piece coming in, almost like Borg-like. It strikes me that when you're dealing with work that's complex, rapidly evolving, and that kind of thing, that the interdependencies amongst people are not as clean and modular as that, and that to assume that you can just put someone into a role and have them quickly assume that role and execute it well without all the team building to understand interdependencies and roles and compensations for each another. So you're already setting people up for failure because you're treating them in a way which is incompatible with the needs of the system. The other part is human need, which is most people need community. And so if you're treating them as interchangeable modules, but really what they want is a sense of community, shared purpose, role, responsibility, accountability in 2 directions, you're going to leave them very, very exposed. And it's kind of ironic that the sort of at the tail end of burnout, the remediation is to try and create this emotional infrastructure. You know, talk to your friends. Well, I don't have any because you manage me in a way that I don't have it. Talk to your colleagues. I don't know their names. I have no concern for them, and they have no concern for me.
And they're
So-
changing every 18 months
right,
anyway.
they're changing every
So
18 months, right? Which I don't have a relationship with them anyway. So there's sort of this espousal to create this emotional infrastructure, precisely because it hadn't existed for that 18 months, 3 years before someone got ejected from the
It's
system.
it's a dollar
Right.
late and a day short.
Right.
yeah.
So But and here's the thing in my mind, and I'm interested, and you probably have something on this from your research, Nicole. You know, it's one thing for a company to say, well, look, we do the best we can. And quite frankly, if they don't fit, we're going to move them out in 18 months anyway. It's someone else's problem. But the fact of the matter is, companies who have that attitude, they're not the high performers, and they don't build high-performing teams, right? As counterintuitive as it may seem, the companies that give a crap, that do something to make it a better workplace, to make it better for individuals to feel part of a team, to feel part, I don't want to use the word family, but you know, I've been lucky enough to co-found about 4 or 5 companies in my career. Currently, you know, this one, and it's a small company, but I go out of my way to make it inclusive like that, because I think there's a payoff there, right? It may seem dollars and cents stupid to invest in that, but it's really the smartest money you can invest. And I know your research has shown some of this.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely see that, and this is echoed in research across several different types of fields, that cultures that optimize for psychological safety, as well as information flow and risk taking and team building, predict better outcomes in terms of software delivery performance, but also in terms of organizational performance. And this really reminds me about, you know, what you said yesterday. If burnout is the canary in the coal mine, you don't give the canary oxygen, you fix the coal mine.
Right, yeah. And I think there's a tendency to focus too much on the individual and what's going on within the person, and neglecting the fact that there are many individuals, and together there is a larger social community and environment and climate and conditions and whatever. And we keep forgetting that that's part of the whole, you know, the whole problem. And so that's why I have to sort of say, always to make it clear, I'm not against taking care of yourself and being healthy and so forth. But in this case, there's this larger thing. And if there's a lot of people who are beginning to have these kind of problems and showing these kind of signs, you've really got to ask the question, what are we not doing right to actually allow people to really thrive and actually be able to do the kinds of things that they might be capable of? And I think your comment to me earlier about, you know, do we ever really do enough in teaching people how to bring out the best in others, that's your main responsibility, is really to say it's about other people and there's, you know, what's possible and how do you encourage them? Because whether we're talking about burnout or we're talking about engagement, what makes people tick? What makes them engaged? It's not going to be whip cracking, you know, or something like that. It's going to be because you're finding something that, wow, you get really excited about, or here's an opportunity and let me spend some time working on that, or this is fun, or this, you know, how do we, you know, in a sense, energize, you know, those kind of core needs that people need to get out there and do all that great stuff. And so I think that's part of it. Even with some of the definitions of engagement, they still kind of come back to focusing on, you know, there's 3 types of engaged people. There's the engaged, the not engaged, the actively disengaged. It's kind of like if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Okay, so there, you know, and the engaged, somehow they've found out how to do that. And the not engaged are people who are just punching in and punching out, and they're waiting for the next break, and they're not working very much. They're the majority. And the actively disengaged may be burned out, but they are trying to undermine other people. Right. It's all saying you, and not what are the things that we can do, bringing you in, that actually can get more people engaged or get, you know, have less of the risk of the stress, burnout, and so forth. So
I agree.
Always coming back to that environmental kind of focus.
I mean, here's just another way we could look at it too. In an age where I have a friend of mine who's the CTO of it's actually a British firm moving to America in the gambling business.
Okay.
You know, football gambling is legal. He's hiring developers and DevOps engineers, paying $250,000 to $300,000 a year for a good, full stack developer. If you could afford, plus benefits, if you could afford to pay a developer that kind of money, how can you not afford to take some fraction additionally to make sure that he's successful in, or he or she, obviously, is successful in your environment, right? And giving him a work, or again, he or she, giving them a workplace that they're going to thrive in. Seems like small potatoes. Compared to the 300 plus you're paying them in salary.
Well, that's where I think, the point is that it's an organizational remit, right? And I think your point earlier when we were chatting about, I think you listed a couple of organizations that do it particularly well, was really interesting.
So you think about the people who get to manage other people. I mean, there are two things. One is if you volunteer to take on that role where you accept authority, with that, someone else has volunteered to give you responsibility for them. And I don't think we often talk in terms of that tightly coupled responsibility with the authority. That if I'm getting the discretion to tell others what to do, I have to do that with a clear eye to their well-being. All right, so that's one. Now, as to why that sense of responsibility tightly coupled with authority is not part of people's thinking, I think most organizations, and we were discussing this beforehand, most organizations don't deliberately cultivate that kind of situational awareness in those who get authority and forget they have responsibility. You take people who have often backgrounds in some kind of technical profession or scientific profession where their education, at least the early parts of their career, have been solving the problems in front of them. And now they've been elevated to now they're responsible for a system. And while they may be good system thinkers on the technical scientific, they've never actually been engaged or encouraged to think about how to create a collaborative system of other people.
Right.
And so now they're stuck with this responsibility authority, which is not to the technical device in front of them, but to the people whose hands and minds are affecting the technical device. But they haven't been deliberately trained and educated and practiced on how to manage hands and minds.
I just want to emphasize that, a lot of people will complain about, oh my God, I don't have a good manager. And one of the biggest problems we have found over the years going through is finding they get promoted because they're really good, like you say, at making widgets. And they're going to supervise the team, but they have not gotten any training, any support. How do you talk and manage people who are now going to build the widgets?
A single contributor, a good single contributor doesn't make a great manager. I mean, it is. I've learned this lesson the hard way. In my career of promoting people, if they were a great developer or they're a great ops person or a security admin, doesn't mean they're going to lead the group real well.
And so it's like you need to actually prepare them and train them and kind of give them the tools, if you will. If you're going to ask them to be doing this job, they need that kind of thing to realize that you can't go and do X because actually that's in violation of, the common practice. What you have to do instead is, et cetera. So that lack of training, of focus, of the responsibility that, I think those are key issues.
All of them are. So I find this personally fascinating. I'd love to sit here all day, but we're at a half hour.
Well, you're going to have to come to our panel because
I will come to
more
the panel.
time.
Can I bring the cameras with me? But actually, your panel will be filmed and it'll be up on YouTube on the IT Rev YouTube.
Well, I'm going to make sure we get that question in on the panel in because I want to hear the rest of your answer.
No, this is fantastic.
I think it's a good thing.
The three of you, thank you so much for spending more than a couple of minutes with us. But fascinating conversation. By the time you're watching this, the panel would have already happened, but go check out the IT Rev YouTube channel and you can grab the panel. There's a bunch of panels, well, not a bunch, but Dr. Maslak, Dr. Spear have been at least one or two others that I've seen. Dr. Nicole, of course, has been in several. Check them all out. They're all there on the IT Rev channel. A lot of our interviews over the years are also on the DevOps TV channel on YouTube. But anyway, we're going to call a wrap on this one. Again, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com on the Digital Anarchist platform from London does 2019. Thanks, everyone.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that panel on burnout. And you know, when we spoke about burnout for that panel, we were really talking about burnout in the workplace. But with everyone working from home, a couple of things. Number one, you can have burnout from home because, especially for those people who are not used to working from home, it's very hard to learn to shut the on-off switch down. Right? People actually wind up working more hours at home than they do in the office because there's no switch of, light to dark, on or off. And so you can do that. And then on top of that, we're all locked in. And so you're feeling isolated, alone, anxiety and stress, all of these things figure in. And that's why taking some of the advice of Dr. Maslak and Dr. Forsgren and Dr. Spears, pay attention to it, be cognizant of it, reach out to people if you're all alone. So excellent piece of video right there. The next part of our show today is I wanted to go over some of the headlines, some of the bigger articles and trends that we're seeing in the news, both on our own media ops site, devops.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal, as well as the news in general. So for those of you who, maybe you haven't been following the mainstream, the federal government, the president announced yesterday that we're going to stay in this sort of lockdown, social distancing situation through at least April 30th and who knows beyond that. So, so for that means for many of you, you're working from home. I think longer term, the issue is, well, can we keep our economy going? Well, especially in tech, we'll continue to develop applications. Are we going to continue to do marketing? What does this mean for budgets? We have a few articles on that are percolating around. And then, of course, it also brings up the whole thing, well, what does this working from home mean? How does it change things? What do I need to be cognizant of? So I wanted to go over a few articles, though. First of all, I want to highlight an article by my partner Jane Grohl over at the DevOps Institute. Jane is the CEO. The DevOps Institute has really kind of done a little bit of a change of their model, and this was actually in the works before this whole COVID-19 popped up, and that is they're going to an open testing model. It used to be that you had to take, before you can get certified and take the test for any of the DevOps Institute 7 or 8 certifications, you had to first take a class by one of their channel partners or one of their registered education partners. And then after completing the course, you can then take the test. DevOps Institute is now offering you the ability to take the test without taking the course. Not that they don't recommend you still take the course, because passing these tests aren't easy. But if you want to self-learn, or you think you have already all the knowledge necessary to be certified, you can take the test and achieve your certification. So Jane does a nice job with that. It's over on devops.com. Have a look at the article. And if you're interested in becoming certified in any of the disciplines that DevOps Institute is offering, head over to devopsinstitute.com for information. Another article I wanted to mention was actually published last Friday, and it's from my friend George Hume. George has been covering the IT tech space for 25 years, and he he does a great job. And this is really an article. He looked at what a bunch of analysts are saying on what this whole coronavirus, the COVID-19 thing, is going to mean for global IT spend. To give you an idea, I think the global IT market is something like a $3 trillion market worldwide. And a lot of analysts are saying that this may very well hit the brakes on global IT spending. Now, of course, this is conjecture. We have to see how it plays out. Do we do what they call a V-shaped recovery? Is it more of a gradual slope recovery? Regardless, I will tell you, as someone who's lived through, unfortunately, multiple IT spending freezes, it will come back, right? And I think really the question is just how long does it last, right? And I think we're all going to hunker down for a little bit, but I'm an optimist, and I'm hoping this comes back. If by April 30th, May 1st, we see a real flattening of the curve, as they say, and not just here in the U.S., though I think the U.S. probably will represent the epicenter in terms of pure numbers. But if we could see the world turn the corner here, I think our spending will come back, and I think it'll come roaring back in hopefully Q3 and 4. So while I think we will see a short-term break in spending, that also isn't for everyone, because certain industries will thrive in this environment, right? The work from home kind of technologies, the remote and automation technologies. So, I'm not a sky is falling kind of person. I wouldn't give up your jobs just yet. And just keep plugging away at home there, folks. Another thing I wanted to talk about was an article that Mike Vizard highlighted, wrote last week. I wanted to highlight. This was about a company that I met over at the TechStars Air Force Accelerator in Boston, run by a couple of Air Force vets, and their technology was really to be able to print with 3D printers airplane parts at remote bases, rather than shipping parts to these bases for the planes. If you could securely print them on site and cut out that whole supply chain logistics stuff. So the name of the company is Veritex, and the president is James Reginor. They've now pivoted in this environment, and they are now setting up plans to allow hospitals with 3D printers to 3D print ventilators right on site. And they think that something like 10 ventilators a day to 100 ventilators a day can be printed by a hospital. I don't know enough about 3D printing to tell you if that's true or not, but I surely hope it is. The company's looking for some seed funding and getting some pilots off the ground. Of course, we've seen a lot of news about the ventilators, and the folks at Dyson recently delivered 1,200 or so ventilators in UK, a new model that they've manufactured, and they're ramping up. Of course, GM has been prodded, and GM was working on it turns out, before the law was enacted or enforced with them on ramping up our production. The issue will be how fast can they ramp up production? And to me, that's really, this gets into the whole issue of agile and nimble, right? And being able to understand what it is the market needs, what your customers want, and how do you respond to that in a nimble way. And again, like I said earlier about companies that will thrive in this environment, the companies that are able to pivot, are able to be nimble and do that, are the companies that will thrive. So great article by Mike Vizard. All 3 or 4 of those articles I just mentioned are on devops.com. Next, I wanted to run over and talk a little bit about some of our Security Boulevard coverage. I will tell you that this month has been a record-setting month for Security Boulevard. In spite of everything that's going on, we've had about 500,000 unique visitors visit us at Security Boulevard, which is a pretty high watermark for us. And what are they coming for? Well, what they're coming for breaks down into two, in my mind, two categories. One are the articles about how to safely and securely handle your remote workers. And, because there's over 400 blogs in the Security Bloggers Network that are published on Security Boulevard, we publish 50 to 70 articles a day. There's something there for everyone. So go check out Security Boulevard if you want, and we have it broken down in areas and you can look. But as I said, two things I wanted to highlight. First was the security of workers working at home. The biggest thing we're seeing in there is how to set up Zoom. How to set up Zoom in a secure manner. There's this whole concept now of Zoom bombing. So a lot of people, they'll publish their public Zoom room or Zoom address, and anyone can just log in. But there are settings in Zoom where you can make it so that not anyone can just log in, that there's a waiting room, that you password protect your Zoom meeting address, and etc. There's 3 or 4 different articles out on Security Boulevard about setting up Zoom, as well as, things a little lighter, like what are the top Zoom backgrounds. Everyone today wants to use a green screen type of Zoom background in there, and it's great. But, which ones, you're going to be careful. Are you giving out any information in that background that you shouldn't be? So good articles on that. Zoom's certainly one of the heroes of this whole thing, right? We're all Zooming. But do check out those articles. There's other ones, though, also around VPN usage and identity and access control, and no shortage of articles around that. And there's plenty of coverage there. Check it out. The other issue I wanted to bring up, and this is one that, frankly, it upsets me, and that is cyber criminals taking advantage of COVID. Why wouldn't they? They take advantage of everything else to perpetrate attacks and fraud and chaos on all of our systems. I was encouraged to see that several, hacking rings or gangs or ransomware groups actually came out and said that they would not attack hospitals, healthcare providers during this time. And thank God for their humanity and their on that, and I applaud that, and I hope it stays like that. But, of course there are others who don't have those kind of morals, who see this as an opportunity to enrich themselves, and they're already scamming. Especially now you've got older people isolated at home who may not be sophisticated users. So bunch of different phishing attacks and kinds of attacks based on this. And I just, what could you say? These people, where is their humanity? But we got to be vigilant about it, right? We always need to be vigilant about it. The other thing that we're going to, I think, start seeing now is sort of the butting of heads of trying to lock things down as a result of this situation, abutting privacy and rights of individuals, and we're seeing it even in Russia with the use of facial recognition and measuring body temperature and stuff, to here in the U.S. about whether or not you can get locked down and what you should have access to and so forth. This is going to be something for the courts to determine, but I also believe that we are in a situation today where public safety has to trump, no pun intended there, public safety has to trump everything else in public health. And so while I'm usually a big fan of personal rights and preserving our freedoms and privacy, I think these are extraordinary times that call for extraordinary measures. And so we'll continue, I think, to see this play out. But at the end of the day, I think public health concerns have to win. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about Container Journal, right? Because more than at the other two sites, Container Journal remains dedicated to cloud native technologies and Kubernetes. And we are seeing we're seeing the continued development of the ecosystem. This has not stopped Kubernetes deployments. It has not stopped new versions coming out and companies, bringing out what they need to do here. The whole idea of automation and everything that containers and Kubernetes and cloud native works to actually plays well in the COVID environment. I was also heartened to see that last week the Cloud Native Computing Foundation announced that Cloud Native Con KubeCon for Europe, which was postponed, I think it was actually supposed to be this week in Amsterdam, has now been rescheduled for August 13th and 16th. They stuck the flag in the ground. I thought it was a bold move. I hope everything's good by then, because I'm looking forward to going and being there and with our Digital Anarchist crew broadcasting live from there. But they did say that if we're not in a position to do live conferences at that point, they are prepared at that point to turn Cloud Native Con KubeCon into a virtual event. But let's hope not. That would be a great coming out party, I think, for the whole cloud native ecosystem if we can hold KubeCon in person in Amsterdam on August 13th and 16th. I pray so. And we'll see. We'll be keeping our eye on that as sort of a canary in the coal mine to see where we go there. I think that's going to be it for the news today. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do encourage you, go to devops.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard to, we're actually backed up with content. We're publishing as much as we can daily. There's a ton of great information out there, so please check them out. With that, though, I want to go into our next segment. In our next segment, we feature Media Ops Managing Editor Charlene O'Hanlon with 2 interviews that she's done over the past few months. The first is our friend Tracy Reagan, who is besides being the CEO of Deploy Hub, she's also a board member at Continuous CDF and very involved with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And I think you'll enjoy this interview with Tracy, with Charlene as well. And let's go over to that, and then I'll be back to introduce our next video.
This is Digital Anarchist at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, San Diego 2019.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel from San Diego, keeping it classy here at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. We are on the Digital Anarchist Network, so thanks for joining us. We are streaming to you live today on Facebook, LinkedIn, DevOps TV on YouTube. We're on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. So no matter where you're watching this, or maybe you're watching it on demand, thanks for joining us. I'm going to be hosting the interviews here for the next 3 days. We have a ton of great speakers, celebrities, folks, just practitioners here attending KubeCon. I want to mention from the outset that this year's broadcast on Digital Anarchist Live is sponsored by our friends at GitLab. So thanks very much to GitLab for sponsoring. And we're going to jump right into it with our first guest. The woman on my right is a CEO founder. She's also a board member of the CD Foundation.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And in her spare time, she does a fair amount of development and engineering and has quite a history of doing that as well. Tracy Reagan, CEO Deploy Hub. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, it's great to have you here, first of all.
It's always fun to be here.
I wanted to just mention straight away that I was in the CDF Summit yesterday, and I happened to catch your presentation in the morning.
Oh,
I thought
good.
it was excellent. I thought it was really well received. But the other thing I really liked is it was standing room only in that room.
That was exciting. We sold out. That was really exciting
Yeah.
for our first North American Summit. Here at this show to sell out was really great for us.
Good stuff. And I think it's indicative. I have some feelings we could jump into around the CD Foundation. But let's come back to that. Let's talk about Deploy Hub a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys are a silver sponsor here.
We are, silver sponsor.
And of course, Deploy Hub is an open source company as well, right? So it fits
does.
right into this whole cloud native.
Yes, our open
Linux.
source project is called Ortelius.io, based on Abraham Ortelius, who is the first atlas maker of the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so what are you finding exciting?
Well, first of all, we have an announcement. We have a new release coming out. So our 9.0 release is out, which enhances the mapping of microservices in visual ways.
Very cool.
Does some other updates to make the platform a little more easier to adopt, which is some of the complaints we got, so we addressed those. And we're working still on that, but we really focused on the microservices mapping this time, which I'm excited about.
And again, for those who aren't familiar, really Deploy Hub and a lot of what you evangelize around, Tracy, is that as we move from this sort of monolithic release type of culture, it is a culture and everything that comes with it, and break that into a microservices kind of culture, this is going to wrought tremendous change.
Tremendous
change in the industry and in the way we do things.
Completely, yeah. Yesterday after my talk, particularly around checking in code and compiling code. So if we think about the way we manage a monolithic application, and I try to keep it as simple as possible, we use a version control tool to do a bit of configuration management, tracking the versions of the source. We check that out and we compile it and we link it. And so we have a binary that we protect. It's really pets, it's not cattle. We protect that binary and we push it across the life cycle and it gets deployed. In microservices, that gets exploded out into many little pieces. Yeah. So the check-in, the versioning is still important, but not like it would be if you had a piece of code that's thousands lines long, where you have multiple developers, you're doing a lot of branching and merging. You have functions, snippets of code, maybe 100 lines, and that doesn't require that kind of branching and merging anymore. It does require versioning though. And then we pull that out, we compile it, and we don't link it. So that's all done at runtime. So we have this shifting methodology where what we used to do in version control and in compiling is now being shifted to the runtime side, which yesterday when I think several people who came up to me afterwards, it was kind of like, it's like, oh no, the build's really not going away. And it was like, well, yeah, you're going to compile stuff, but you're really not going to link things. So that huge step in that configuration management puzzle is now being shifted to runtime, which is a huge shift from what we do now.
Absolutely. And maybe, again, people have not assumptions, but aspirations is a good word. People have aspirations that, by moving to microservices, by doing all of these things, we are going to have to get away with, we don't have to do the compiling anymore. We don't have to do...
Yeah, they have to use Python does, it's interpreted, so it doesn't...
But, someone smarter than me once told me that most of the progress we make, especially in the tech field, is more evolutionary than revolutionary. And I think that seems more evolutionary to me, right?
I would say
steps.
That, I've watched the industry change over the course of my career, and we have only a few tsunamis.
Right.
One of the big ones for me was, mainframe to the PC. I jumped as fast as I could to get down onto that platform. And everything.
I'm not going to say anything.
No, don't. And then everything else was kind of a slow step. And then, as I talked about yesterday, I was a tiers developer for IBM, which is an AI platform, and I worked for Farmers Insurance and actuaries. And we realized, and this was in the 90s, we realized then that we did not have processing power to do the kind of massive pattern matching that we needed to achieve our goal. And we didn't ever think it would happen. We really didn't. When I first saw what Kubernetes was doing, and I first started understanding containers, and I started understanding that a GPU, you could go from 15 GPUs to 15,000 in a matter of seconds, I stood up and started running around. I got so excited.
It was pretty exciting.
It was so exciting. And that's when I realized this is a massive shift in the way we think about software, the way we design software, and the way our future is going to look when we go and sit down and start coding.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have microservices that are shared across open source communities. And we're basically, if you think about a service as like a giant neural net, we're basically building a neural net where we can borrow on all of these reusable pieces.
Yeah.
And drag and drop an application and only have to change a tiny part of it to build software.
And that's what scale is about, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
true scale on a massive scale. I wanted to shift a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about open source.
Okay.
I mean, and really, as we look at this line, people can't see because they're facing us. But if you looked at that way, there's a line a mile long for people to get their
swag.
Cloud Native
Yeah,
T-shirt,
uh-huh.
right? And this whole thing that we're in here, there's I think 12,000 plus people, is really driven by open source,
Totally driven,
right?
yes. Mhm.
And I look at the CDF summit, and I have to tell you, I came in early. I spent the weekend at the Spinnaker summit, which is now, of course, part of CDF.
Yep.
And what was interesting there is within that community, there appears to be some school of thought that, let's just say they're not 100% jumping up and down doing cartwheels, that Spinnaker is part of CDF, right? They tend to think of it as, their special baby that, in CDF it'll get lost among some of the others. I really believe that what we see here is the blossoming of open source, and the reason is, without saying you're old because you're not old, but you just mentioned you were in the mainframe days, right? You were there when we first started seeing Linux and other open source
And
tools.
then I was on the Eclipse Foundation too.
Oh, Eclipse.
I was on the board there.
Right. And
we
so,
did quite a bit of work trying to figure out what open source looked like and how to monetize it and how to build a governance body to really
and that
manage
was probably early, right?
That
The
was
Eclipse
way
was
early, really
because
early.
back then, open source was sort of free as in freedom and free as in beer, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't governed well.
It was the cathedral and the bazaar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've written about this, and I'm going to write about what I saw at Spinnaker Summit this weekend. But I call that the cathedral and bazaar stage of open source, where it was kind of, prehistory, if you will. And it was free as in freedom, free as in beer, anything goes, down with the man, long live the whatever. Then we went through another period, I would say, in the early 2000s through 2012, where I call it the Big Brother period of open source, where every open source project that was semi-successful seemed to have a sugar daddy or a daddy Warbucks that managed it.
Eclipse at IBM.
Eclipse was IBM.
Yeah.
I don't mean to single out anyone. All of the open source
had somebody behind.
Right,
yes.
they had a sponsor.
Yes.
And those sponsors really kind of, in a lot of cases, ran those open source projects for their own benefit, more than the benefit necessarily of the community.
Of the community, yes.
They preached
of
the
the
community,
ecosystem,
but
yeah.
that's how they monetized it.
Yeah.
And now, you look at Linux Foundation and their model here in the Cloud Native and CDF, and we're in the foundation era of open source, where no one vendor should dictate an open source
And no one
project.
vendor, especially if you think about, take Spinnaker, coming out of Netflix.
And Google. Yeah.
Netflix, they are a technology company, but they're I'm not so sure how quickly they want to run out and start selling enterprise software.
No.
So they have this great platform that can benefit the community, and they can be of service to the community as a whole. A foundation's a perfect place to contribute
Yes.
it to, so that it can have the governing board, it can have the ecosystem, and it can be outside of a pure Netflix controlled environment.
It's not a big brother.
It's not a big brother.
It's truly a foundation.
Yes.
And I think this foundation era of open source has set afire everything that we see here, right? All of the excitement, the buzz, the
It
flourishing.
validates it.
Well, it
validates
enables
it.
it too, though, because people don't have to feel. I'll use Jenkins, and CloudBees was an excellent mentor, sponsor, whatever you want to call it, of Jenkins. But a lot of companies, as well as practitioners who maybe wanted to use Jenkins or do things with Jenkins or contribute code to Jenkins, maybe were hesitant to do so because it would benefit let's say, cloud bees. And I don't mean to call them out. They were actually a very benevolent partner to Jenkins as these open source projects go. But now when it's in with a foundation, I don't have to worry that I'm doing it for the benefit of just one vendor. It really is community.
It's totally
Everyone
an ecosystem.
gets to use it
Yes.
and go with it.
Yeah, no, it really does. It elevates the open source product line to a level where there's a governance board, and enterprises then are less apprehensive about
Right.
adopting it because they know there's a governance board, there's somebody managing it, they have the ability to contribute to that if they want to make sure it's going to be maintained properly. So it does change the game quite a bit for open source.
It is. It's a huge game changer. And I
And
think
it's just in
everything we
time for
see-
this shift in modern architecture.
Well,
It's just in time.
well, it's a question. It's a chicken and an egg question.
Well,
Did the shift help that, or did this help the shift?
I
And-
think when Google contributed Kubernetes to the Linux Foundation, that was earth-shaking. I mean, we
For
felt the
modern
tremors.
architecture,
Yes,
yeah.
we felt the tremors. That was huge.
Android for phone systems.
Yes.
I mean, there's been. You can point to several, but yeah,
It's
interesting
a great
stuff.
time to be in software. It's really exciting. It really is.
You know what?
I'm
I
so
gotta
happy
tell
to be
you
in this
something.
business.
I was talking off camera. We're staying in an Airbnb off, about 10 minutes from the convention center. I was in the car with my team this morning, and we, were stuck in traffic, just pulling into the parking lot. There's not a lot of traffic
Yeah.
in San Diego. It wasn't
No.
terrible, but here at the convention center, with all the traffic, and I turned around and I said to my team, you know what? We're blessed to be here at this period in time.
We are.
What a great time to be in this industry, to be seeing the developments that we're seeing, the innovation,
We are the
buzz.
generation that's going to build the platform for tomorrow's AI and ML technologies.
So I was already part of one generation that was going to change the world. Didn't work out so good, but let's hope this one does.
This one does. We just, and there's all kinds of topics around AI and what the future will look like with that. It could be a dangerous future for us, but it's
it'll
not
be
going to be.
exciting.
Like I said in my talk yesterday, 47% of U.S. jobs will be replaced by AI and machine learning. It's a lot of jobs.
And if people
But there'll
don't
be a
get their head
massive
around
new jobs created,
Yep.
and we have to get our head around it, and we have to understand what it means.
I agree. All right, Tracy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
This is Tracy Reagan, CEO, founder of Deploy Hub, board member of CDF. She's joining us live as we're part of the insanity of the show floor here at Cloud Native Con, KubeCon San Diego. This is Alan Schimmel. Thanks for joining us on the Digital Anarchist Network. Stay tuned. We'll have our next guest up shortly. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that interview with Tracy Reagan. Tracy's a really bright woman, always with just great insight on what to say. I enjoy listening and interviewing Tracy as well. I want to introduce another Charlene O'Hanlon interview, and that is from our recent coverage at the RSA conference this February, and it features Alan Vance of Beyond Trust. And again, this was from Digital Anarchist Live at RSA. This is Charlene O'Hanlon and Alan Vance.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops. We put out DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, and the Digital Anarchist media platform. We are winding up day 3 of the RSA 2020 conference. I cannot believe how many good conversations we've had over the course of the last 2-3 days. And my last victim, so to speak, is Alan Vance, right?
That's right.
VP of Product at Beyond Trust. And I'm so excited that you're here and you're closing things out for me.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here, Charlene.
Yeah, great. So we've had many conversations about DevSecOps. We've had many conversations about application security. We have not had one conversation about identity and access management. And I know that's what your company is involved in, privileged access management. So I figured, well, let's have a conversation about identity management first, because it seems to me that's such a fundamental of security, but it doesn't seem like a lot of companies are doing it very well. So what are some of the things you're seeing in the space that how companies are screwing up, basically, and what can be done to make it better?
Sure. Well, the way the industry is pretty much recognized to be organized is that what we do, privileged access management at Beyond Trust, as you say, is a part of identity and access management. I mean, if you don't get a hold of identity, you're not ever going to solve your problems, right? It is absolutely fundamental to anything else you do. And that identity problem has gotten worse because we're not, as opposed to in the olden days, which would be 1990,
right.
we're not just talking about
so
human
long ago.
identities, right?
Right.
We're talking about application identities and OT, IoT, and all those things, right? You talked about containers, ephemerals, applications, and cloud. So IAM really broadly, though, defines the concepts of who are the entities or actors in the system, and what do I want to allow them to be able to do. Mm-hmm. And if you start from there, you get into identity governance, and how do you make the rules, and who gets to do what, mm-hmm. and tracking that, and what actually happened versus what was supposed to happen. And to move over into PAM in particular, where we deal with things is that, you and I have laptops, whatever, we have an account, we log in,
yep.
We have credentials, mm-hmm. but it's the privileged credentials that are the problem, right? The sysadmin on Windows, the
right.
root essentially on a Mac or Linux, Unix device. And Forrester research says that 80% of successful data breaches at some point involve the use of a privileged credential. So we have solutions that do various things in that category, just very briefly, from finding and securing in a software vault those credentials and only allowing them to be used in a very controlled way, which is audited, from actually moving admin privileges from end users, okay. Administrators as well, mm-hmm. but replacing that with a set of technology and a policy that still allows them to do what they need to do in a very capable, granular way with no friction or even awareness on their part. Mm-hmm. And then finally, a secure remote access set of products. When I am on the help desk, for example, or am I an external vendor, and I'm connecting into or through your network, I'm often using privilege in connecting to sensitive assets. Think
right.
of the help desk has got, the CEO has a board meeting she's going to and her laptop dies.
Right.
So somebody's got to fix that, but
mm-hmm.
you kind of really want to know what they're actually doing on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those sort of use cases are what we focus on, yeah. And identity is critical to all that. Mm-hmm. From our sense, right, we don't manage identity,
yeah.
but our product set integrates with a lot of great identity technology leaders. SailPoint would be just one example that we announced recently.
Okay, all right, great. So I know that in the past we've been hearing about sysadmins or IT administrators just kind of leaving all the boxes checked for privileged access management, and that is actually introducing a major security breach opportunity because they don't know that their systems aren't really secure. I mean, they're not being security conscious, if you will. Mm-hmm. Do you think automation is going to become a necessary tool when it comes to privileged access management and really kind of help companies lock down their networks better and make sure that those who do have the access have it, and then those that don't are automatically flagged and not given that access?
Yeah, I mean, yes is the short answer. Yeah. Exactly. What you want to do is take out the human element as much as is feasible. Mm-hmm. And so a simple example of this would be a sysadmin needs to get on a Linux box and do something. And they're going to need to have access through the root account to do that, whatever it is. Let's install a new package or something. In the traditional way, the admin would know that credential, the password. And by the way, it's probably shared with 7 or 8 of their peers, right? And who knows who else. Yeah. And they create an SSH session and log into that Linux box. Mm-hmm. So from an automation perspective, for example, one of our products, Password Safe, can say, okay, instead the admin goes to Password Safe and says, I need to get on that box. And I just click the button and say, put me on that box. the system itself creates the session, the SSH session, injects the credentials, which the admin never even knows what they are or cares what they are, puts the person in, not only allows them to get in, and this is a key point about administrative privileges, historically they've been kind of on or off, either had admin rights or you didn't.
Right.
What we can do here is say you may only have certain rights on that box and not others, and further we're going to actually record everything that you do and be able to play that back later and search it in case there's any issues, or just to do audits, right?
That's interesting.
Which again is all kind of automated processes to do that. And then finally when they terminate the session, or you could even say, this session will not be any longer than 15 minutes, you know, because according to the help desk ticket that opened up this issue in the first place, this should be able to be done quickly. So it'll actually log the person out, because like, why are you still on there? Or when they get out, we'll actually rotate or change the password again. And all that'll be done by automation. So it is absolutely essential to good security.
That's great. That's great to hear. You know, because we hear about, you know, these kind of so many security breaches happen because basically human error. So I'm hearing a lot about automation all throughout the security tool chain, if you will.
Sure.
So,
I mean, it's true of anything in manufacturing. You know, that's why, you know, 100-something years ago, there were like 300 car companies in America.
Right.
And they'd each make 3 cars a year by hand, which is great. But I bet none of those 3 cars were the same either.
Right,
Even
right.
from the same guys. So routinization, automation, and you know, that's what literally the definition of manufacturing is, doing the same thing over and over. And that's how you get it right. And we need to keep applying these things, which we certainly do in the DevOps community, right? Obviously, those folks listening know all about that, to do things like automated testing, automated packaging, and deployment tools, and those sorts of technologies.
All right, great. So when we're talking about this in relative terms to, you know, DevOps, as you mentioned, but DevSecOps also, are you seeing more of an uptake in the community when it comes to you know, addressing security as part of the DevOps tool chain? Are you seeing more companies more attuned to that?
I am, and I don't know how much I can say whether that's the DevOps teams are actually looking for it, or the CISO, the auditors are finally saying, hey, your kind of pass is over, because while we focused on the rest of the enterprise and kind of let the developers do their own thing, and I get it, you know, I was a developer earlier in my career, they finally said, hey, you got to kind of get on board. But that doesn't mean you have to use the same solution as the enterprise solution.
Okay.
Right. So as we were talking before the show, you know, we just announced a DevOps secret safe product.
Okay.
It's aimed right at the DevOps community. It protects the credentials, the API keys, the certificates, passphrases, anything, SSH keys that's involved in the CI/CD tool chain. All those tools, you know, Jenkins, Ansible, Puppet, Terraform, they have credentials. And a lot of times you can lose intellectual property or be a vector for larger attack into the enterprise through those applications if they're not properly protected.
Right.
And so to us, that is how we say that we're putting the sec into DevOps to create that DevSecOps. You know, it's people process technology like anything else.
Sure.
And we're bringing a particular technology to bear that we think balances helping protect those credentials and those workflows, but without disrupting, you know, what the developers and the operations people are trying to do.
You think we're ever going to get to just DevOps, no DevSecOps? Like, you know, security will automatically be in there, so it's not going to get singled out?
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. We're still struggling a bit, even whether it's DevSecOps or SecDevOps, you know,
right? Or rugged DevOps,
and
or
I think you
whatever.
can't. If you can't add any more of those 3-letter things in there.
Well, there's NetSec DevOps that I've heard also. It's like
that just needs to stop right now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, but you're right though. Philosophically, is where it needs to be. When you do anything in IT, it should just have security in it, right? Right. That's the goal, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, food for thought. Definitely, Alan. Thank you so much for your time, and let's circle back next year and maybe have this conversation again, see where we are.
Awesome, love to. Thanks, Charlene.
All right, great. And thus ends another successful RSA 2020. Another successful RSA, day 3 of interviews. Thank you so much for joining us between Alan, Schimmel, Mitchell, Ashley, and the rest of the Media Ops gang. I do want to thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again at the next conference.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
I have another great interview coming up here, and as you saw, the Accelerated Strategy Group, Mitchell Ashley, CEO. Mitchell was with us at the RSA conference this past February, and he had a chance to sit down with Shannon Leitz, who, besides being a friend, is really one of the women I look up to in DevSecOps. She actually founded the DevSecOps.org movement. But Shannon does a great job with her Intuit team, and Mitchell and her had a great conversation at RSA. So I think you'll really enjoy this one. Here's Mitchell Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group, talking with Shannon Leitz of Intuit at RSA conference just this past February.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Hi, Mitch Ashley here at RSA 2020 in San Francisco. We're here as part of MediaOps, the conglomerate of course, DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, Digital Anarchist, all kinds of great things for us. I'm also the president CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group, an analyst organization. And I'm very fortunate to have with me today Shannon Leitz.
Nice to see you.
You know how you put all the acronyms after your title, your name? You kind of have that. Let's see. Leader Director of DevSecOps, founder of Intuit's Red Team, Hacker Girl. What else can we add to
Security
those?
Practitioner's Annual Report, otherwise known as the SPAR Report.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're very, very active in the community, which is awesome.
Trying, yeah.
That's great. Well, let's talk about that. So you've been working on this report. Mm-hmm. Just kind of out of a passion to do it, it sounds like. Tell us about what it is.
So in 2019, after RSA, I decided that I hadn't seen some of the information I wanted to see. And it kind of became a big, light bulb question mark. And that's always my passion is I get a curiosity and I can't really let it down. Mm-hmm. So I went out and started reading more and more reports, trying to figure out why do we see certain types of threat reports come out during the year? Questions like, what are the metrics that are really most important? And so around that time frame, I decided, maybe I could mount some information together and do something unique with it. And so I pulled a bunch of reports together. I think at the time I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30, 40 reports, and I was seeing interesting trends kind of sitting on top of them. The Mary Meeker report came out in May, and I'm always inspired by Mary Meeker, who isn't? She has an incredible amount of data and insights and knowledge in her 333 slides in 2019. Wow. And you can imagine 333 slides, but it rolls right like this. And what was interesting is in that report, I always tend to read things a little bit different. I found a whole bunch of security related information that you just don't get in the industry. So I thought, well, you know what are we doing with this information that we keep sharing with each other? And I decided that I was going to try and pool my time, basically 2 hours a night, 10 hours on Saturday, 10 hours on Sunday. You get about 30 hours a week to put towards something.
That's a work week for most people.
Yeah, so, I kind of like to do stuff that's kind of cool. So if you're passionate, it's actually not that much time. It turned into a lot of time, but kind of like I got so into it that I ended up reading these things. I was on a train for an hour. You can read a report for that. If you're in the middle of being in a car for 45 minutes, you got plenty of time. So it became just kind of my passion and my quest. And what I found out was in 1,500 hours, you can do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So the security industry has about 5,800 security companies. And actually, that's just based on public knowledge of those companies. There's actually quite a few more, but because a majority of the security vendors that are out there are actually private, you have a hard time actually finding that information.
More difficult.
Yeah, so 99% of all the security companies out there don't have a stock symbol, if you can imagine it. And we're seeing more actually show up in the IPO market, but we're not actually getting enough insights about them. So if you can imagine, like, somebody's got a problem they're trying to solve, how the heck do they find these small companies? Where are they located? Marketing efforts are just not enough these days. So that was kind of keen for me. So I've been like earmarking all these companies. As I pick up the latest swag at something, I write down that company, go see if it's in my database. If it's in my database, awesome. If it's not in my database, it gets added. And there's lots of trends to be had. So I found things like, brand new companies that were starting out that didn't make it the entire year that I've been researching, right? That's kind of an insight where you realize that they're just not getting the eyeballs they need to get the traction for the thing that they're trying to solve. And some of the problems they're solving are really interesting and important problems. So
it's not always because they don't have the right product or the right technology. Somebody just getting it to market in the right way, timing, all kinds of factors.
So 300 plus reports and thousands of articles. It's all cataloged. I basically pulled it all together. Metrics that have been cataloged so that I can share the insights. And so we're in the middle of reviewing for publish, and I think it's going to come out mid-March.
Tell us the name again,
Security Practitioners Annual Report.
Annual report.
Yep, SPAR.
Very nice. Sounds awesome.
Yep, and the short link I'm going to be posting on LinkedIn and Twitter. So I'm hoping it's an experiment for me. If it turns out to be awesome and people want it and they read it, awesome. I'll do it again. I'll keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it anyways. I'm already excited. Yeah.
Exactly.
But, one of the things you learn through experimentation is what's useful for people. So I'm hoping to sort of create more community feedback and also maybe even crowdsource some of the information and figure out how to make it meaningful for the average security practitioner who isn't going to spend 1,500 hours a year trying to do these things.
No, you're going to charge lots of money to get access to this
Zero
report?
fee. It's a free report.
Nice. Knowledge wants to be free.
It does.
So that's our acronym or our
Knowledge
tagline.
does want to be
Knowledge
free.
wants to be free. Good for you.
Yeah.
Very cool. By the way, I know a good way to get access to those private companies. It's called being an analyst. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for discussion. So what timing on this? When's the report? Are you planning on publishing
It's
it?
Mid-March. We don't have a date just yet, but it's going to happen mid-March. Okay. And so I know that by the 31st we'll be out of mid-March, right?
Yeah, we're not very far.
But I can imagine it's probably going to be around the 15th.
Let us know the URL. We'll help you.
The URL is dso.to/spar.
Okay. dso.to/spar.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Oh, hey, there we go.
It's already short linked.
It's already trending on whatever. Right?
Well, there's one slide there, the name of the report, but it is coming out, and we're super excited. Just have to go through and make sure we spell check the sucker, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of work that goes into.
Yeah, there's a tremendous
amount. A lot
amount.
of just detailed work for producing something like that.
So we also have a word cloud and some really cool things, but the slides themselves are a lot of graphs. And the reports are also cataloged in the actual report. Mm-hmm. So if somebody wants to go see some of the source material, they can go see what's in there. And if we missed some, because it was an epic Google dorking project.
I can't imagine you missed anything, right? You probably reached the end of the internet and you found it all.
No, I don't know. But I'm excited if I ever do get to the end of that data source, because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, I think that's a long thread to get to the end of that. So.
There's a lot of people publishing thread information out there.
Good information.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's obviously taken a lot of your time. But
it has.
I know it's not all you're working on. Tell us about some of the other work.
So this last couple of months, we've been doing more with Hacker Girl, and the site's a little outdated. We're in the middle of reposting that. And we started this project to experiment with Hacker Girl to see what our format's going to be. In March, we're doing another experiment with a big cloud company to get out there and get about 30 women together and see if we can bring jobs to their cause.
Excellent.
So I'd like to try and get to the point where we have more women in the industry. And ISC Squared actually published a report that's actually also in my report. And it looks like there's 24% of the global security workforce is now women, which is great. It's 1 in 4.
That's actually really good. Not that it's high
Much
enough,
better.
but yeah, it's a huge improvement.
Not where I'd like it to be just yet, but 1 in 4, I'll take it. That's pretty amazing, because the last time I looked, it was 11%, and 24% is more than double.
Oh,
so that's pretty nice.
What are some of the insights for hiring managers, people that are helping recruit, but also helping mentor and develop and train, bring people up to help women in our field?
It's interesting, because one of the insights we've found is maybe we're all not thinking about it correctly in the industry. It's a lot easier to get women to help each other up. And so one of the things we learned was have an interesting project. So we started Ponagotchis. Ponagotchis are an incredible project where you go and hack Wi-Fi and get the passwords out to be able to go back and replay, and that'll inspire somebody with some confidence that once they do that project,
I can do that.
You have to build a Raspberry Pi. Generally, you get it on the internet. You have to actually solder, so that's something new and unique. And they have little face plates, so they're kind of cute too. So you can hang it off your purse or your backpack, and you can walk around. They also get angry, so they're like little pets. It's kind of cute. Awesome idea. We had one of the girls in the group decide to do that, so we've been funding that. And we went to Israel last month and played it out, and some of the folks there were really excited about it. So by creating that culture, one of the things you also do is once a module gets created by one woman, we think that the idea is more women should be bringing their ideas to bear and teaching their ideas. So at least bring one module to a community, and then you learn by doing the other modules out there. So that's the side of content, that's the mentorship, and really trying to inspire that. The other side of it is we just really have to change the game by bringing jobs to these events. One of the things that we noticed is we're going to a lot of security events where women are involved, but we're not actually putting our money where our mouths are when it comes to jobs as an industry. And I think that's really what has to change. We need to get more people creating jobs that are dedicated to enriching the workforce with women in it. I'd like to see more of that. I'd also like to see more companies posting their metrics for creating more inclusive environments, and how long do they retain the individuals in those jobs, and how high do those individuals get in the organization with mentorship and also investment in it. It does take more effort to bring somebody in who's new to the community and new to the practice, but absolutely worthwhile. Somebody who's brand new to cybersecurity can be very meaningful in your program actually pretty quickly. It's just really connecting them to the right people.
Are there studies, or do you see the same kind of income disparity between men and women in our field?
Yeah, there is a bit of income disparity from the data I've seen thus far, and I think that's unfortunate. We need to definitely spend more time as a industry looking at that. It's also what I've seen is that it's based on the amount of experience that somebody has. So quite often the way that it's being justified is that women are coming in with less time under their belt, and that can be one of the reasons why the pay is disproportionate.
I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I worked with a really good HR person in one of my prior jobs to work on exactly that. And the simple answer is just look at marketability of someone, regardless of sex. Where is a female employee at? And just make the change. Don't worry about if it's a 10% or 20% or 50%. Just get them where they need to be.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You know what? You'll have the most loyal workforce ever, and of course appreciative of it, but also they deserve it.
Yeah.
Right? And we've got to do something to correct it.
Well, you
And
want
it's
to.
not that hard. I mean, yes, it takes money, but people are worth it.
Well, you want to reward people for their performance. So it tends to be too. One of the other studies I saw was actually in the Harvard Business Review, which I thought was really interesting. They were talking about what actually causes the female-male disproportionate things in the industry. And in that study, they were trying to figure it out. Is it because women want to leave to support their family? Are they trying to have children during that period? Are they taking pay cuts to be able to spend more time with their families? And what was interesting in the study, and there's a whole bunch of information, it was just recently published, so I think it's the March-April issue if you're interested.
Oh, I definitely will.
Totally worth reading. And what they had in that issue was basically, when it came down to it in the study, it was really about work hours, and the longer somebody has to work, the more likely there'll be a disproportionate balance between men and women. Just simply, and what's interesting is men are actually equally as burned out, but because of the way that it's being positioned as being a family issue, it actually creates that stigma, and it's what's actually taxing women at this point. So we have to stop believing that women have to have it easier on them to be able to take to support their families and the things that they want to. Actually, everybody needs to take it easier on themselves. And I think we're just, as a culture in tech, racing towards, the endless nights. And obviously, I just did a huge project. But I got to tell you, it was a passion of mine, so it didn't feel like work. And I think that's what we got to find, is we got to find the more passionate things that people want to do. And we got to turn it into the things that make it so that they can do it while they're out and about and on their own time. And because of the things that they're passionate about, spending that effort really doesn't then become work. It's actually a practice of love. So from my perspective, I'd like to see there'd be more balance in work hours, and I'd also like to see there be a little bit more maybe holacracy when it comes to work. So I don't know if you've also read the other book that I think is pretty incredible, which is Reimagining Organizations or Reinventing Organizations. Reinventing Organizations is a fantastic book. It's got lots of pictures in it, so it's a really fast read. He does an incredible job in that book identifying how we can all work together in meaningful ways, and maybe even in a more agile way. So if I go back to my favorite thing, which is DevSecOps, I really do believe in those kinds of things, and I think those practices are also what's allowing women to maybe do more.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have such a shortage of people in the field, so many jobs that can't be filled.
Yep.
Just don't have enough people. We have to think of ways of making the work lessen the work. We don't need more hours. We don't need more work. We need
more
to find
innovation.
ways. Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be automating. It could be rethinking the problem. It can be, lots of different approaches. But I think that fits into what you're talking about. Of it's just not working harder. Yeah, we all want to work hard. But we also don't want to burn everybody out and make the problem worse, so we can't even find even more people to fill those jobs.
Actually, another thing too is Stanford has their design thinking work that they've been pushing, and IDEO is another company that dedicates itself to innovation. Both of those have raised all kinds of practices for you to ideate, and actually I believe that some of that work has helped me to reduce the amount of time it's taken to produce really cool things, and also collaboration. So one of the reasons I didn't collaborate this year on the SPAR report is because it was an experiment. Was I going to ask a whole lot of people to basically waste their time with me? I'd like to go see if it's going to actually work out before I involve people. But my intention thereafter is, once I've kind of figured out some of this stuff, to collaborate with the community and actually bring more people into that type of endeavor. And I think once you actually prove out an experiment, it's time to really figure out how do you scale things like that. From my perspective, I think they do a really nice job with design thinking of figuring out how to have you tell better stories, have you figure out how to collaborate better, putting some of your ideas to prototypes long before you spend a lot of the effort on them. I mean, I prototyped my report for like a month before I started really digging into it, and I think that helped me to see that there might be use by people so that I could dedicate some time to it. I do hope, and actually it was kind of nice, I gave my talk just shortly ago. I had a couple of students walk up and said they want to participate. So I thought that was really nice to see, just sharing that information and being able to create a forum for people who have like-minded interest is, I think, also going to enrich the community as well.
What a great way to learn the industry, learn the topic, learn the subject.
Exactly. And what was great is they were both women.
Well, even better.
Totally.
Even better.
It was very exciting.
Very cool. So the theme, of course, with around people, RSA, it sounds like your work is really fitting right well into that. So.
I definitely love the human element this year. I think it's an incredible thing for them to put on. I've always been very appreciative of the RSA conference. I think they've brought a lot of people together. They've helped to change what I think the industry needs to be. And I'm hoping that over the next few years it's going to be even more incredible. I know they have all kinds of great things ahead of us.
Well, we're looking forward to the report. Shannon Leitz, thanks for joining us here at RSA and for your talk and all your work in the industry.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. All right.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network, and we're back here in our studio. I hope you enjoyed the Shannon Leitz interview with Mitchell Ashley from RSA. I thought it was a really good interview, and Shannon's always someone you like to talk to. Next, I wanted to run another Accelerated Strategies Group video, and this one features Accelerated Strategies CEO Mitchell Ashley and Accelerated Strategies Group Principal Analyst Sanjeev Sharma. And Sanjeev and Mitchell are talking, as analysts often do actually, about executives and DevOps adoption. So I think it's a great discussion. I think you'll enjoy it as well. So let's go to Mitchell and Sanjeev Sharma, Principal Analyst at ASG Group, and we'll be back right after that.
Mitch Ashley here with the Accelerated Strategies Group. I'm here with Sanjeev Sharma. We're at RSA, as you can tell from our background, lots of activities going on, and Sanjeev gave a great, matter of fact, it was a fantastic presentation last night at a private dinner that was hosted by Qualys, and Sanjeev was the featured speaker and gave a great talk. So it was really good. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I work with you. I was pretty blown away.
No, keep going.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yes. It was fantastic. So I'd love to talk with you about it because that was an audience of CIOs, CISOs, mostly security people.
Pretty much everybody in InfoSec. Yeah.
Really trying to grapple with DevOps, DevSecOps. How does this fit into security? How do organizations adopt this? How do you deal with everything from compliance and auditing to building secure software? When you were preparing for that talk, how did you kind of put your thoughts together of this, how am I going to talk to this audience?
Yeah, and I think thanks for the introduction and for your kind words on the presentation, Rich. But it was a great crowd. It was a great set of people who know security inside out. And as you said, what they're trying to figure out is, now that we are moving towards an agile DevOps style of delivering applications where it's not, there's an end state and there's a steady state. There's no steady state, right? There is an ongoing continuous flow of changes coming from the developers. And that doesn't mean the developer has become certainly more important, but the developer does now have a more continuous impact on what we are delivering than he or she used to have before. To answer your question, how I prepared for the talk, was I just went back over my conversations I've had with people in this infosec world, to CISOs, about how they are handling it and what challenges are they facing. In fact, one of the conversations which I did not talk about yesterday, because it was probably not appropriate, was with the CISO of a large retailer, and I asked him, "What's your number one goal?" And he's like, "Not to get my name in the Wall Street Journal, right? Because the only way people will know about him is if they."
I've heard that before
Yes.
from CEOs as well.
Exactly.
As CISOs.
He's like, "I don't want any Wall Street reporter to know who I am, where I live, what degree I got." And we've seen after those breaches, some of the CISO gets blamed.
They do.
But the world today has become very chaotic. Not only is the software we are delivering changing constantly, we're constantly barraged by people trying to attempt breaching the system, looking for vulnerabilities. It's a constant barrage. It's a chaotic world. And I think the security posture has to now shift with that assumption that everything is constantly changing, everything is being constantly bombarded. How can I make systems more secure by finding those vulnerabilities before they ever get deployed? And that's always been the thinking behind DevOps, is that I want to test before it's time to test. I want to test before it actually gets to quote-unquote QA.
When we test it, it's already been tested.
It's already too late, right? And the thinking behind DevOps, one of the terms we use in DevOps a lot is shift left, right? Make the people on the right who were actually doing stuff become the people who provide what they were doing as a service to the people left of them in the application delivery pipeline. So testers don't test anymore. They provide tools and services to the developers to be able to test the code early. The deployment engineers, build engineers don't build and deploy software anymore. They supply tools to the developers and the testers.
They build the systems that do that.
Exactly. So the thesis of my presentation yesterday, my talk yesterday, was that needs to happen in security next. Security needs to get democratized. That requires, first of all, a massive cultural change in the InfoSec world, amongst the CISOs and their teams, because they have to be willing to cede power, cede control.
They can't be the gatekeeper anymore.
They cannot be the gatekeeper. It's
Matter of fact,
too
they
late.
can't keep up with it. I mean, I feel a lot
too
of
many
compassion
gates.
for them trying to. The world's moving too fast. Too much software is being created.
Absolutely.
Too many demands on doing it much more quickly.
Absolutely, and that is the challenge, right? So how do I do that? Now in the CISO, in the InfoSec world, and when I'm trying to secure my applications and my infrastructure and my data, I provide tools to the professionals who are now responsible for it, who are the owners, who are the builders, so that they can secure the infrastructure, the code, and the data as they are working with it and testing it for vulnerabilities. The best time to test for a vulnerability is when the code is written.
Yeah, freshly minted.
Absolutely.
You had a really good framework of talking about this, and one of the concepts that you talked about was guardrails. So part of this seceding control, meaning security people are not doing all of the validation testing, etc., for security vulnerabilities, but providing the right kind of guardrails so that others can do that work as part of their responsibility.
Yeah, so let me clarify. That doesn't mean that security people are not doing it, but they want to reduce the burden on what they have to do by empowering others to do it earlier. Right? No security person is going to now suddenly stop doing what regularly they were doing anyways. Just
kind
that,
of encapsulating what they know or how they want people to operate.
They also want others to have already checked it before, right? Just like a QA tester is already going to do all the testing, but they're going to test at a different abstraction layer. Instead of doing functional testing, maybe they're going to do integration testing, because they're assuming the functional testing was already done by the developers as they were writing code. But what about at the integration layer? The same way the security professionals, they should be able to look at the logs and the results of all the vulnerability testing the developer did when she was building a Docker image, and they go, well, it passed. I don't need to do anything, but let me still test the system as well. So it's not a question of not doing it; it's reducing the burden by introducing automation and empowering other people to do it. So I think that is extremely critical, right? And yes, it's a cultural shift. It is a thinking shift, but it's also a technology shift, because the automation needs to be brought in. You can't do this manually.
You talk about the shift. How it's a big theme, I think, at RSA this year that I've heard multiple times, is democratization of security. Where do you think CISO security professionals are on that curve of Are we just at the kind of dawning realization stage if that's what we need to do? Have we kind of figured out what it really means to do it, and then there's sort of the embracing and really living it out? Where do you think we are?
I think it's an early stage, right? I think the cultural shift has not happened yet
I agree.
because they still have all the responsibility.
Yeah, no one said, oh, by the way, it's okay. These people are doing it now.
Exactly. Now everybody else is doing it, so you're not responsible. They still have all the responsibility. It's having, the hammer is still going to come down on them at the end of the day. So going back to your comment about guardrails, right? I think it's going to be time before they build the confidence that these tools can actually provide guardrails which are foolproof and they can trust. If you remember my presentation, I said democratization of any technology has 4 requirements. Number 1, it needs to be self-service, which means you have to have automation so the practitioner who is creating code which might be vulnerable can self-serve the tests to look for it. Second thing, it has to come from permission, with permission to act. If I still need to get an approval from a CISO to, or my an executive,
just let them test.
Yeah, and then what's the point, right? Third is guardrails, right? That automation has to build guardrails, providing people a safe path to go on. But those guardrails have to be trusted, and they have to allow us to seed trust to the practitioner. That trust part is going to take time. It is not going to happen overnight.
It's not easy for security people to easily engender trust. Not that they're not trustful people, but it's their job.
It is their job to be skeptical and say, there's Easter eggs in this code, I know it. How do I find it? There's a backdoor here somewhere. I have to go on with that assumption that it's there and I have to find it. You can't say it's not there without doing all the rigorous testing. You can't say there is no library, open source library, this is dependent upon, which is perfectly secure. You have to have that mechanism built into your mindset to say, I'm always looking for what can go wrong. The trust says that my automation, my guardrails that I've built are secure enough and are hardened enough that if the code has followed that path and gone through all the checkpoints which I built for the developers and the testers to go through, this is secure code. That's going to take time to get to, and it's going to take time to even build that automation. A lot of that tooling is not designed for me allowing you to run who is not an InfoSec expert. You are, the developer who's not an InfoSec expert to run that automation and understand what the results mean, right? That trust that the developers are not constantly trying to find a way to bypass the guardrails.
Well,
that trust will take time.
And it also goes to providing tools in a way that developers will see it as an aid, not an impedance to getting code out the door. I have a hypothesis. We have a little bit of time left. I want to run by you. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. Feel free to totally disagree or agree, whatever you feel. This shift towards democratization and security, my sense is that it's in some ways being led by the customers, not the vendors in the industry. And the reason why I say that is there may be some thought leaders in the vendors. I'm not saying there aren't. But it's such a massive shift, I think, for security product companies to start thinking of developers as their customers and how to sell in the dev world, kind of developer relations world, versus an enterprise security type sale. But the customers kind of have to lead the giving up, if you will, control in place of trust and guardrails and the elements that you thought of. So it's really the end customers that have to lead this transformation, not necessarily the vendors. So I'm not saying I 100% believe it's just a hypothesis.
I think you're true, because I think that is true for all technology. I mean, if we are developing technology to be consumed by somebody, we have to lead them in a particular way.
Unless you're Mark Benioff, and then everybody should have no software buttons, right?
We are in San Francisco. You shouldn't say that here. I can probably see the tower from here.
Sure.
At the end of the day, you're building software for people to use. Right? You're building tools for people who are developing software to use. In the traditional siloed world, this InfoSec team was in their own silo, and they operated and said, whatever you build, I will make sure it's secure, and I'm going to give you guidelines, secure engineering practices to make sure you're building good software. But that software was not, you have to assume they'll follow the guidelines, and then you have to assume they'll not follow the guidelines, and I'll look for where.
Assume the worst, right?
Yes. But here now you're saying is, I'm not just giving you a secure engineering guidebook or handbook and policies. I'm actually giving you the tools to validate that what you did follows that. That is a shift. There's a shift in power. One of the things which I know, which I agree with you, which I think will drive it, is the sheer lack of talent.
Oh, yeah, shortage.
Right, shortage of talent, not lack of talent. There's
Right.
enough talent. There's a shortage.
Some very
of talent.
talented,
Yes,
but very
thank you.
short.
Thanks for the correcting.
Saved
that.
you from some
Yes,
tweets
I know.
and
Seriously,
some bad things, but
yes. So the shortage of talent, and when we are going from an environment where you have maybe 200 virtual machines, servers running, to now 200,000 containers running, to all your data, all your applications running in a data center which you could physically go visit, test their physical access
go
controls.
Downstairs, hear the
Yeah.
the fans
Exactly,
humming, right?
and
How do
do an
longer?
audit of their security systems to make sure, where you knew where everything was. Okay, this is where my database is. This is where it fails over to today's cloud environment and SaaS environment, third-party service environment, open dependence on open source software, which is code written by everybody, which is nobody.
Right.
You cannot keep up without ceding some controls and saying, I cannot test it all, I cannot manage it all. I have to empower everybody to manage it all and control it all. And then I become responsible for seeing the results, saying, this is where somebody hit the guardrail. Why did they hit it? This is where the guardrail went off the rails, right? It broke. What happened, right? Or this guardrail is wrong, right? I gave the example, it needs to be shifted. I gave the example yesterday about how the definition of EU has changed since Brexit.
Yeah.
So
UK.
exactly, UK is no longer in EU, so all the laws which allowed you to get EU data in Britain, that guardrail has to exclude Britain, UK now, right? To say, okay, that's outside the EU, so if I have to keep my data within the EU, it cannot go to a data center or a developer working out of the UK.
Or if it's there now, got to do something.
Got to do
change
something,
it.
right? And I know there are companies who have their DR. They live on the mainland Europe, and their DR is in UK or other way around. It doesn't work anymore. You can't do it if you have that requirement to say everything has to remain within UK. So that guardrail shifted. That guardrail has to change. But with automation, this should be just a simple change in my
It's
policy.
easy to move.
Yes.
Easier said, but easy to move. What were some of the there are a lot of questions from the audience.
I could have stayed there another hour.
I know. Well, I think it's scheduled for 45 minutes, and you went an hour and a half.
Yes.
In a good way.
Yes, it was interactive. Nobody left.
Nobody
That's my
left.
measure to say, okay, if I run over time, it's a dinner thing. Which
They weren't
people can
checking their
leave.
phones for email
Yep.
either. I was looking around. What were some of the questions? Do you recall any questions you thought were particularly interesting or insightful, or kind of spoke maybe to where you think some of the challenges?
I think
people are wrestling with?
the question was more around how does this DevOps movement, why is it so fluid? I think that was very interesting.
Well, yeah, the definition is not a solid.
Yes,
well,
because
defined
DevOps is not a
thing.
methodology,
Yeah, that
right?
was-
It is an approach. Also, how you apply DevOps depends upon your current state.
That was a really important point. You
It
talked
is
about from your
absolutely, yeah,
book
that is,
of
it
using
is
playbooks, not
exactly,
here's how to
and
do
it is true for security, how you do security also, right? So the whole idea of me writing a book called the DevOps Adoption Playbook is that DevOps is not a prescriptive methodology. And what
It's
you
not a
have,
methodology.
it is not a methodology at
Right.
all, right? So what I have in my book is a series of plays. It's like a coach's playbook. So if I'm a coach, which I'm not, but if I'm coaching a team, I decide what play to play next with my team on several factors. Am I playing offense or defense? Right? Who has the ball? Who are my players who are on the field at that moment? Is my best player injured, or is my best player on the bench because they need a break? Am I ahead of the game, or am I behind the game? If I have technical debt, I'm behind by definition. If it's a greenfield application starting afresh, I'm ahead. You'll be ahead for 2 weeks. When your sprint finishes, you're behind already because you have technical debt. all those decide what am I trying to achieve? Am I building a new application? Am I updating an application? Am I, what kind of technology stack to have? How mature is my team? How ready is my team to change? All those are factors which go into what play I can play today. And I think that is the thinking which is very critical as we as security professionals think about democratizing security. It's not one size fits all, right? When as you're building those guardrails, you have to go, do I have the kind of developers who are always going to try to poke holes in the guardrails? Well, then I'd better start with solid guardrails now. They need to be concrete walls, right? Not a series of yellow light reflectors which say don't go beyond this line.
What are the problems they'll probably run into first, and let's get those things in place.
Exactly. And then it's also, most importantly, the cultural issue. The culture has to change, and the reason DevOps is so difficult to adopt is because most organizations really struggle with changing the culture. This is the way we've always done things. It's not broken, not my problem.
So mindset change, culture change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is pretty fundamental.
Over the years, I've done a lot of surveys of teams of organizations, and you ever question somebody one-on-one, they're like, hey, are you responsible for code after it leaves your functional area? Of course I am. It's all my code. But in reality, when you see them operate as a team, they're like, shoot it over the wall, not my problem now. And that cultural shift is very critical. And what the DevSecOps movement is doing, saying security needs to be a part of that cultural shift. You can't leave them out.
Well, we want to wrap things up. I just want to thank Qualys for having you speak. Also, Gary Gruber spoke at the night before at a CISO interchange event. And we're going to be taking some of the talks from both Gary and Sanjeev and posting some elements of that. So you'll be able to see some excerpts of that. So thanks. Good to have a podcast together.
Great chatting with you, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
You do the same. Thank you.
Okay, hey, it's Alan Schimmel back here, TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. Hope you enjoyed that last video from Mitchell Ashley and Sanjeev Sharma talking about executives and DevOps adoption. It's always a very popular topic over at DevOps.com. You know what? That's going to pretty much wrap up our second day of TechStrong TV coverage here. We've filled up almost 2 hours. We hope you enjoy it. We hope you're getting something out of it. We will be back tomorrow with even more great content. Until then, hope everyone stays healthy and well. Remember, we can all flatten this curve if we work together in stopping the transmission with the transmission of the disease with distancing, social distancing. Doing what the authorities are telling us to do in terms of stay home and work from home and quarantine ourselves. And hopefully we'll all come out of this okay. And more importantly, the tech community will stay strong. So for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network, this is Alan Schimmel, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and you're watching TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network for Tuesday, March 31st, and welcome. For those of you who didn't catch our initial broadcast yesterday, TechStrong TV is something we're going to be doing here at Media Ops. Every day we're going to start with a 2-hour lineup of scheduling, and we're going to expand that to 4 hours, probably within the next week to two. And really, what is TechStrong TV? If you didn't watch yesterday, it's our response to what's going on in the world. Hey, many of you watching this are watching it from home. Rather than watching it on your computer screen, maybe you're watching it on Roku TV or Apple TV or Amazon Fire, or perhaps on a mobile app on your tablet. We're working from home. It's It's a strange time, or at least an unusual time for many of us, surreal in some ways. And if you're like me, you're probably tired of listening to the news. It's kind of a bad news generator, and we want to know what's going on. It's important, but we don't need it 24/7. If you're also like me, you're probably spending a lot of nights binging on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Disney and Apple and what have you. But we're thinking that, again, if you're like me, you're out there and you want to hear what's going on in tech news. You want to find out, keep learning, keep expanding your expertise in what's happening in tech and software development, DevOps, digital transformation, cloud native, and cybersecurity. Well, those are the areas we're going to cover every day here. And we're really happy for you to join us, whether you're watching us live or perhaps on a tape delay. Do try to make time to check us out every day. And you'll see over the next week as we expand, we're going to start making this a little bit more interactive. I'd like to open a Slack channel and get some audience feedback. We're working on that. We'd like to open a Zoom room and allow some folks to come on here. We will be scheduling more live interviews as well. So, this is our second day, day 2, as we roll this out. Give us a chance and we'll get this going. The other thing I wanted to mention, that along with, why the name TechStrong, is that in spite of everything that we're all dealing with, tech will go on. We will continue to develop. We will continue to deploy. We will continue to monitor, and we'll continue to protect our IT assets. And because that's what the tech community does. We may not be able to meet in person. We may be doing virtual and on-air stuff like this, but we will move that. We will continue to do so. As part of that, I also want to mention that we are holding TechStrong Conference, a virtual conference, on June 4th. And would love to have you guys check it out. The website will be up shortly, announcing our first set of speakers, and it's techstrongcon.com. And of course, you can follow along on the web here at techstrong.tv or digitalanarchist.live and digitalanarchist.com. Anyway, with that being said, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let's jump into our programming for today. We do, as I mentioned, have about 2 hours worth of programming lined up for you. And some of it is coming out of our video archives. We have between our YouTube channel of DevOps TV on YouTube and our Digital Anarchist archives, we literally have thousands of great interviews that we'll be pulling from selectively, only the best, over these next few weeks to supplement our live programming. So we'll be right back with some stuff, but before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps